Vote Daddy Papa Ahmed for Vice President. Vote for Labour Party LP. The party where you get Papa, Mama, and Pikin as local. Obi Daddy 2023. A new Nigeria is possible.
A new Nigeria is possible. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Nigerians and friends of Nigeria from around the world, I welcome you to the fourth in our series of conversations with the living legends of Nigeria. Oh, wow. Joining me to host this conversation are Dr. Mo, Lady Kibati Bankole, and Emma Saddam. Kibati, are you there?
Hi, good evening, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Living Legend series space. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to another enlightening space tonight. How are you tonight? Hope you're good.
Very well, very well. Kibati, we had some energy in your voice yesterday. What's happening today?
Man, I'm hungover from all the activities in Lagos of yesterday, but I've been trying to recover my strength. Yesterday was pretty intense. Most of us are still recovering, But no, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, fantastic. Emma Saddam, please say something to us.
Brother, good evening. Kibati, good
You were
evening.
very busy yesterday.
As usual, I'm always busy, bro.
Correct. So how's it today?
Thank God we're up here now. We're back.
Yeah, good.
I don't know. Are we streaming the debate live?
The debate, yes, we should stream the debate once it starts. I mean, between the two of us, we can deal with that.
Okay, that's fine.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been an enriching conversation on the series, with the living legends. We've had Pa Ayo Adebanjo on this platform. We've had Chief Edwin Clark on this platform, and yesterday we had Senator Bucknor Akerele on this platform, and it's been phenomenal with all of these legends. Today we have the honor to have Chief John Nnia Nwodo as our guest speaker. Before we bring him up to the platform to engage with us, I'd like to give the opportunity to Mr. Valentine Ozigbo, the special advisor to Mr. Peter Obi on strategic alliances and technology, to speak to us, to give us a sense of what to expect in this conversation. Mr. Valentine, please.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I am here excited again to listen to our legends. It's always good to celebrate them when they are alive. For Chief Nnia Nwodo, I'm proud to call him my mentor. I call him Ike Ukehe, the Ike of Ukehe Kingdom. So, obviously, for those who don't know him, who wouldn't know him? But for those who don't know him, you're in for a ride. If you really, really want to understand where this country has been and where we're headed, there's no better human being to tell you, because he's the man whose oratory power, even in my second life, I'm not sure I can never get anywhere close. So let me not bore you with mine. Let's listen to the man in person. God bless you all, and get enlightened and get obedient. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir. As it is customary with us, before we bring our special guests on the platform, we read their profile. In the course of preparing for this edition, I got to see a very beautiful work that was done by Oseloka Zikora. It is titled John Nnia Nwodo, an orator and an apostle of restructuring. Zikora is a veteran broadcaster and public affairs analyst. He was the media advisor to the John Nwodo presidential campaign from 2002 to 2003. So, ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to read that piece as it encapsulates the personality of Chief John Nwodo. His oratorical skills is his spotlight, which catapults him mostly to dizzying heights, sometimes not contemplated. Take Ibadan, for instance, where he was an economics student at the then Premier University. He was contesting the Students' Union presidency, and he had a Yoruba student as the leading opponent. How would he an alleger, that's a stranger, turned the table against such a formidable opposition. Then came the manifesto night. His opponent spoke first and, against the rules of the contest, concluded his address in Yoruba, appealing to ethnic sentiments and exhorting the predominantly Yoruba student population to vote one of their own. The chant was Tinwa Tinwa o Jeka Wole, and the atmosphere was charged. To make matters worse, the crowd was dispersing in the accompanying commotion. Somehow, confronted by a Yoruba student and chief campaigner of the disadvantaged Omoigbo, the electoral officer asked that the hall be locked, insisting that all candidates must be heard. That was the lock that changed the course that night for John Nnia Nwodo. Add to that the fact that many of the Yoruba students felt insulted by the opponent's resort to primordial sentiments. So Nwodo, determined to seize the disenchantment of the moment, and remembering the lines he memorized from his elder brother, late Dr. John Nwodo's PhD thesis, he waxed both oratorical and philosophical. With booming baritone voice, he spoke with alluring cadence. The University of Ibadan, in view of its premier position in the development of institutions of higher learning in Nigeria, is like a national educational volcano. When Ibadan sneezes, the rest of the universities in Nigeria catch cold. It is in this connection that I see the leadership of the Students' Union. It must be a model to follow. It must partner with the university's administrators to achieve the highest level of academic excellence, of students' behavior, and a shining example of Nigeria's greatness to the rest of the world. His love for the descriptive way Dr. Joe had written about the Congo crisis and the role of the OAU and the United Nations in the achievement of world peace had saved the day for the creative John. The lines in question were, the Congo, in view of its central position in Africa, was like a continental political volcano. Accordingly, when it erupts, seismic waves ripple across the whole of Africa, and the OAU broke into the Casablanca and Monrovia blocks. The enraptured students were clearly electrified with the brilliant eloquence that they carried him shoulder high all over the campus that night. Of course, the next day's election was a mere walkover, for victory had been assured with the gift of the gab for John. Reminiscing on that Unibadan election, Nwodo recalled, the female students preferred me to my opponent. Forgive me my modesty, but they thought I looked better. Secondly, the postgraduate students, the medical students who were older, thought I was more mature and more forthright than my opponent. Thirdly, the majority of students who were adults, especially those who came from outside, preferred someone like me. Far more important, the young Yorubas found something attractive in what they described as my intellectual dynamism. When my opponent resorted to tribal sentiment to secure votes, something like Emilopon, and I'm the one adding that, many of his kin felt insulted by that primordial inclination. The Yorubas have continued to show an urban, cosmopolitan, and detribalized perspective in assessing intellectual issues in our country, and that was dramatized in my election. Apart from his father, Chief J.U. Nwodo, a First Republic politician, young John's foray into politics was heavily influenced by the late Dr. Joe Nwodo, popularly referred to as Agadagba Chiluzo. I hope I got that right. Agadagba Chiluzo. Perhaps due to his intimidating presence and imposing height, not only in psyche, but in the soapbox. No wonder that John Nwodo, after his university days, delved right into mainstream national politics as one of the brilliant young stars of the then National Party of Nigeria, NPN. He was appointed a special assistant to President Shehu Shagari on information and special duties at the age of 27, and later promoted to Minister for Aviation during Shagari's second tenure. He was to become a Minister for Information and Culture under General Abdulsalam Abubakar's regime, and between 2002 and 2003 contested the presidential primaries of the then All Nigeria People's Party, ANPP. Speaking about his role in government, ex-head of state General Abdulsalam Abubakar said, Chief Nwodo was not just a member of the cabinet, but a phenomenal one, being the mouthpiece of the administration as Minister of Information. His was one choice of a square peg in a square hole. He did his job so well that the challenges of our administration then were very well placed before Nigerians and the international community. Nwodo's contributions in the cabinet were outstanding, not just for his oratory and eloquent delivery of points, but more for his deep understanding of issues of governance. An apostle of restructuring, Nwodo's thoughts on the subject are best encapsulated in a speech delivered at Chatham House, London, where he emphasized that the model of sharing government revenue must give way to a new structure which challenges and drives productivity in different regions across the country. This new model must take into account that the factors driving productivity in today's world are no longer driven by fossil energy, but rather the proliferation of a knowledge-based economy. The restructuring of Nigeria into smaller and independent federations and the devolution of powers to these federating units to control exclusively their human capital development, mineral resources, agriculture, and power, albeit with an obligation to contribute to the federal government, is the only way to salvage our fledgling economy. Restructuring, he stressed, would devote attention to the new wealth areas, promote competition and productivity as the new federating units struggle to survive. It will drastically reduce corruption as the large federal parastatals which gulp government revenue with little or no impact dissolve and give way to small and viable organs in the new federating units. The high point of Nwodo's political career was his election as the 9th President General of the Ohaneze Ndigbo, the apex sociocultural organization representing all the Igbo-speaking communities domiciled in the southeast states of Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Enugu, and Imo states, the south-south states of Akwa Ibom, Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, and River State. Hey, calm down. Plus the north-central states of Benue and Kogi. Speaking of his term at the helm of the Pan-Igbo organization, Nnia Nwodo disclosed that his leadership's major achievements include the overall awakening of the consciousness of Igbo people to the desire to be united and speak with one voice, and placing that voice on the front burner of the Nigerian agenda. You could see the desire of our people to nurture an organization that speaks for them the same way PANDEP speaks for the Niger Delta, Middle Belt Forum speaks for that region, Afenifere speaks for the Yoruba, and the way the Arewa Northern Elders Forum speaks for the North. That and the partnership are nurtured with PANDEF, Afenifere, and Middle Belt Forum in representing the interests of the people from these various geographical areas. Chief John Nwodo, an alumnus of the prestigious London School of Economics, was married to Regina Obiageli Nwodo, Justice of the Court of Appeal of Nigeria, until her demise in 2013. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and country people, join me to make welcome Chief John Nnia Nwodo to this special Twitter space with the living legends of Nigeria. You're very much welcome, sir. Anayo, you can open up your mic for Chief to interact with us.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, sir. We can hear you, sir. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know whether it was Kibati or Oraye who spoke, but I thank you, Kibati. I thank you, Oraye, and thank you, Valentine, for the very generous compliments, which I think are most
You're
undeserving.
welcome, sir.
It's my pleasure to participate in this, and I look forward to your
Great,
questions.
great. And I'll go right to the first question.
Yeah.
Sir, you've been severally described as an apostle of restructuring. Some people hear the word restructuring, and they catch cold, right? To borrow your words from your University of Ibadan, when some people hear the word restructuring, they catch cold. Why do you hold the position that restructuring is fundamental to Nigeria's progress? And how can the fears of opponents of restructuring be allayed, sir?
Actually, my entire contribution to this discussion is based on that belief. I was born 8 years before Nigeria attained independence. So I grew up in a restructured Nigeria. In other words, in a Nigeria in which on independence, the regions were the micro unit of administration.
Mm.
And the federation was an association of the regions. The regions had ownership of their natural resources with a legislative enactment which required them to pay royalty to the federal government. The region had complete monopoly of their domestic security, except for enforcement of federal laws. In other words, the commissioner of police in a region was appointed by the premier in consultation with the states, with the regional House of Assembly. The policemen were recruited within the region. Policing is a local phenomenon all over the world. You will find that wherever you live in Nigeria, your neighborhood watch is more effective than your divisional police command because your neighborhood watch knows everyone in the neighborhood. He knows when the stranger is coming in. At the time that we had regions, we had less security problems as we have today. The regions controlled the educational curriculum in their regions and the control of primary, secondary, as well as university education. They shared a concurrent responsibility with the federal government for university education. The regions had routes that were not federal highways that were their exclusive responsibility. And they went into joint development with federal government on federal highways. In other words, power was domiciled at the local level, and each region had a county council, which had at the subordinate level responsibility at a micro level for some of these subheads that I have outlined. Now, what was the demonstration effect of this? I give you a typology. I went to primary school in 1957 when I was 5 years old. My father was then a member of the Eastern Nigerian House of Assembly and a junior minister. It was then, appellation then was Parliamentary Secretary for Health before he became a minister. I started school in a rural school in Enugu, still today a rural school called St. Patrick's Ivovadi. My classmate in that school was James Enejere, the junior brother of my father's driver. Now, if I had a wife within the 9 years that I lost my wife, I'm sure that if my child was starting in primary school today, he would not be a classmate of my brother driver's child except by my benevolence. The schools are now stratified according to the economic resource of the parent. It never existed when we had regional governments. You passed, you went. When I went to secondary school, my secondary school was run by the Marist brothers. It was called College of Immaculate Conception, CIC Enugu. They were two recipients of my father's scholarship in that school. They used to beat me in physics, chemistry, biology, and mathematics. I used to beat them in English language, literature, the subjective subjects, more or less. But when we had an overall score, they scored from the first to the fifth or sixth positions, and I was bringing up from the seventh to the 12th position out of a class of 30. And my father used to say to me in Igbo, translated into English, you will courtesy to those whose father has courtesy to me. And I swear that it would never happen to me. When we went to that secondary school, our teaching was a lot better than the teaching our children are getting today. I'm a lawyer and an economist, but I read physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics. I can remember the textbooks. Biology was written by Stone and Cousins. Chemistry was written by Holderness and Lambert. Physics was written by Nelcon. Mathematics was written by Cannon and Smith. I read this 52 years ago. I remember my chemistry lab. I read chemistry, physics, and biology 52 years ago, but I still remember them. Beginning with the biology lab, I can tell you today the bones in the body, from the cranium to the metatarsals. I can tell you the radius ulna, the tibia, fibula. In fact, we used to call our biology lecturer a nickname called acetabulum, which is a bone in the hip joint. I could tell you in the ear, the ligaments in the ear, and the peristaltic contraction of the incus, the stapes, and the malleus. In the chemistry lab, it was all about chemical reactions. I could remember my oxidation, my reduction, my double decomposition, my crystallization, my lateral displacement of radicals. I could remember my hydrocarbons and the hydrogenation of oil, fractional distillation of petroleum. I could remember the distillation of the various products of crude oil at different temperatures and what the products were, whether they were kerosene or petrol or diesel or tar. I could remember in my physics the experiments on light, on mechanics. Or I could remember the aggregation of the ion filings around the north and south poles of a magnetic pole. The irony and the tragedy of all this is that my own children, in my lifetime, took their school certificate exams in alternative to practicals. They read it up. They didn't see it. My classmates who were recipients of my father's scholarship ended up as professor and managing director of a federal establishment. So when you mention my own curriculum vitae, you forget that I was Shagari's minister for 1.5 months. So I'm not part of the rot. I was sworn in November 11, and we were kicked out by Buhari in December 31st. I was Minister of Information for 8.5 months or thereabouts under Abdusalam Abubakar, when we were in a transition government. So I had glimpses of government, but no aggrandizement of it. And it pains me that government is no longer an instrument for the transformation of society in Nigeria. It is an avenue for self-aggrandizement without recourse to extant laws. So I do not know what you want me to say, but I am giving a prelude to your question, and a prelude answer to your question, in the hope that as we go along, I can elucidate more on why we are at the junction of history, and a critical junction, where whatever decision we take now will determine the future of our country. One of the things that excites me is that the young people like you who are on this platform today have taken the law into your hands. It was the same way that Zik and Ogrembe Macaulay took the law into their hands when we sought for independence and formed political parties, and Awolowo and Aminu Kano and Amadu Bello joined to ensure that we obtained independence for our country. It was the same way that our first intellectuals, in the persons of Kenneth Dike, Wole Soyinka, and the rest of them, struggled to indigenize university education in Nigeria. When I went to University of Ibadan in 1973, 72, 73, every journal published in the world was available in my library within 1 week of its publication. Our lecturers published topically because we had a university press which printed their publications at very discounted costs. We had a departmental library for every department and a faculty library and a general library for the entire students. We read every journal published in the world within 2 weeks of its publication. It was education made easy. Today, it is handouts given out by lecturers whose horizons are limited, who indulge in plagiarism, lifting articles from books written by other people and circulating to the students without any analysis of those articles and their reference to our indigenous requirements in knowledge. Everything has collapsed. Just as we were topical on intellectual pursuits, we were topical in other things. We joined societies at the secondary schools. We joined science societies, science club, debating societies. We engaged students in other secondary schools with exchange of debates and what have you. This no longer exists. Our schools are class-based. The equipments are more in the schools where more school fees are paid. And admission to them is a function of your father's financial background or your mother's financial background rather than your intellectual capacity. This is the nunc dimittis of a nation. When the basic values of life have to be purchased. I purchase water in my house in Enugu and I live in GRA in Enugu, where water is supposed to run 24 hours. It used to run. But now, whenever we have water, it is like sighting the moon when it is winter. And we struggle to fill in as many containers as possible in order to have access to water. But as a young child, I played football in the streets of Coal Camp, and I had my bath in the showers of Coal Camp before I returned to my parents' home. I drank water from the tap, public tap, because it was chlorinated. It was pure. You could drink it. It no longer exists today. And when I say this, for people of your age, it appears like a fairy tale. Could anything like this have happened? But it did happen. When I was admitted in Franklyn Hospital as a child, when I was suffering from malaria, the day I was being discharged, I was crying that I didn't want to go. The place was so clean, so enjoyable to be in. Every morning, the nurse came to make my bed and asked me what I wanted for breakfast. As far back as that, I could take cornflakes. I had all kinds of sausages available to me. I had breakfast, which was available in a 5-star hotel in my hospital bed. And when I said I didn't want to go, my mom was about to cane me and say, do you mean the food I cook at home is not as good as that? I was going to say yes, but I didn't have the courage to say so. The hospital was made comfortable for you. A white man was at my beckon and call, treating me. They were looking for jobs here rather than in their own country. But right now, the whole thing is all upside down. If you find a hospital like that in Nigeria, it will not be a general hospital like Parkland. It will be a private hospital, extremely expensive and out of the reach of the ordinary man. Should I go into basic production and occupation of the ordinary human being? We were sustained by our raw materials and the growth of import substitution industries. I used to trek 3 miles to fetch water until Okpara dug a borehole in my village. And that borehole no longer works today. How many years after Okpara ceased to be premier? What about The free education that Chief Awolowo started in Western Nigeria, what has happened to it? Primary schools were built in the most remotest of villages in Western Nigeria. Cocoa was in plentiful production and exported. And up till today, we have no import substitution industry to use cocoa plantations to make chocolate and export finished chocolate to other countries of the world. We still prefer imported chocolate. Where are the granite pyramids in northern Nigeria that earned so much money? When I went to University of Ibadan had a prelim campus in Jos. It was called University of Ibadan Jos campus. I went to Jos by rail from Enugu. I knew nobody in Jos. My father read on the newspaper of the name of a man called Satik Dogwim, Commissioner for Education, Benue Plateau State. And he wrote him a letter. My son is coming to Ibadan for a prelim program that would last for a couple of months. But I have nobody in Ibadan. Jos, we know nobody there. Could you please be his guardian? Satik Gogwim came every Saturday evening to pick me to his house. I slept on the same bed with his children. A man who never knew my father nor knew me. He allowed me intimacy with both his male and female children, and we behaved like brothers and sisters. When I went to Ibadan University, as you said in your intro, I won an election into the Students' Union in a Yoruba-dominated university. And this was 3 years after the war that had brought up all kinds of divisional feelings amongst Nigerians, but it was quickly forgotten under the program of reconciliation and reconstruction. We Igbos were admitted back to Ibadan. We went to an entrance examination in faraway Aba, and our results were published in Daily Times in order of merit. There was no sorting. There was nothing like the kind of corrupt jam that we have today. You knew those who were your intellectual equals then. It doesn't happen anymore. We are at the brink of complete failure and disintegration. So you ask me what is restructuring. I have advertised to you what was restructuring in my time, what it led to. When I went to London School of Economics for a second degree, I came second class honors upper division. I was first in international law, and I was made to read my exam script in front of my lecturer and the husband. And my classmates who came second and third, they also read the exam scripts. You could see the foundational value of my Nigerian education resonating in England, where I was beating English people in the same course. Of course, it happens now, but it is just like it's just like a twinkle of an eye. It's happening in the minority of cases rather than in the majority of cases. You know that our diversity of language gives us divergent thinking processes. And when you go to a country like England or the United States of America, when they think in only one language, you're miles ahead of them because your mental conjuncture is considerably fast. Your capacity for comprehension is unassailable. Leadership has destroyed us. Today we have leaders who can't even make correct English and their campaigns. They can't make correct sentences. They are not models for emulation. You can't take me where you've never been to. Our country is in a mess. As President General of Ohanaeze, I'm not allowed to carry a party card. And after being President General of Ohanaeze, I want to retain that neutrality. But faced with the circumstances of our country, I cannot but admit that of all the presidential candidates that are going to come up for election in less than 2 weeks' time, I'm most attracted to Peter Obi. I'm attracted to Peter Obi first for his foundational original intelligence, secondly for his commitments and clarity of expression in his programs and where he wants to take Nigeria to. Third, for the tribalized composition of his campaign paraphernalia in terms of personnel and in terms of formations.
Chief,
lives from
yes. Chief, sir, we'll come to Peter Obi because we will take you on Peter Obi. Trust me, we'll take you on, Peter
Yes.
Obi. But an aspect of, in fact, I've been in tears, and I'm following up conversations with people, and I can imagine how emotional this is for a lot of people, especially for young people like me. The Nigeria you painted is completely alien to us, and the question we ask ourselves, was Nigeria ever like that? But we trust you because we've heard these stories from people like you, legends, who lived in a Nigeria that was better, that offered hope, that cared for everyone, But it's such a sad situation that things have broken up so badly as they are today. The other aspect of the question is this, sir. There are people who oppose restructuring. How can we help them become supporters of restructuring? So that we can wrap this issue of restructuring up, sir. How can we help them become supporters of restructuring? Because they've been standing in the way for so long. And
the people who oppose this oppose it from of understanding. They have a mind that all means and our revelation from extremely unfair is because you change quality of seats and a larger proportion to federal government.
Is it just me?
sir, your network, we can barely hear you, sir. We can barely hear you.
I am shouting. Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
It's better now, sir.
Yes, yes. I said those, who say this because they are beneficiaries of our present structure. And they believe that when you restructure, they will lose the benefits they accrue from division of mineral revenues on the basis of equality of states and supremacy of the federal government. But they do not understand that if we had restructuring and the states have sovereignty over their natural resources, production will explode. And if production explodes, it will become obvious to you that some states who are wanting to keep their oil revenue allocation to will discard it for new sources of revenue that they do not know. The Netherlands is the highest exporter of vegetables in the world today. And its aggregate export of revenue from agriculture alone is about 50 times, if not 100 times, the quantity of external revenue that Nigeria gets from oil. The whole of northern Nigeria is very rich agricultural land, as well as rich mineral land. Right now, we have gold and diamond in northern Nigeria, which are being exploited without any revenue coming to the Nigerian coffers. They're exploited illegally, and they are fueling Boko Haram and bandits who are guarding the place, and part of our leadership establishment are protecting this illegal trade. And that's why they do not want anything called restructuring, because that will go into the coffers of Zamfara State, of Katsina State, of Plateau State, of Kogi State, and other areas that have this rich mineral. And these earnings will be a lot more than our oil revenue. Even the oil revenue that is monopolized by the federal government today is full of theft. How can a country like Nigeria be unable to know how much crude oil it exploits on a daily basis? Because half of it is stolen, if not 3/4. How can we be unable to fulfill our OPEC quota? How can we recruit the worst in our society in terms of training and exposure to technology in relevant fields in the most critical areas of our economy? Why is there no competitive employment scrutiny for those who go there? After all, if they do well, the gains will percolate around the whole of Nigeria. Why must we use quota system in NMPC? Why must we use quota system in meteorological institutes? We have to take our best there. Does America use quota system to do its own? Does Netherlands use quota system to do its own? If you tell me to go and graze a cow today, I can't. So if we start a major cow industry, most of the people who work there are those who have been used to doing it, and they'll come mainly from the north. If you want a milking industry, it will come mainly from the north. So what is all this regionalization or tribalization of endeavors? We have not embraced the culture of one Nigeria. I mean, speaking like an Igbo man, I understand what it means because we have a landlocked area and a huge population. And as an Igbo man, I am forced to live outside Nigeria in order to make ends meet. And I can see the abounding wealth in all parts of Nigeria. And if people will control the resources within their areas, it means that it will be disadvantageous to an Igbo man. So when you tell me about restructuring, you can see that it will tax us and our ingenuity in Igbo land. But that is what Catalonia is to Spain. That is what Bayern is to Germany. That is what Lagos is to us as it is today. And we have no grudge for Lagos. And Lagos has a liberal policy that admits all Nigerians. And because it does so, they have the best manpower available in Lagos to build up the Lagos capital. We can't be one country and not one country. We have to regionalize in order to make our country stronger. When we limit the power of the federal government, we limit the conflict in the struggle to be president of Nigeria. And you will see that the performance will come from the regional governments. They will become the heroes of Nigeria. And there will be acute competition between the regions about generating the best level of education, the best level of agricultural production, the best level of import substitution, the best.
We've lost you for a bit, sir. Can you hear us? Wow.
Probably he got a call or something.
Possibly.
But guys, before he comes back, please, you guys can share the space, retweet the space. And if you have questions for him, because we won't be taking enough speakers, please, you could share your questions with the Living Legend hashtag. We'll be asking him questions as the hashtag comes through. Please, on the comment section, just ask your questions, whatever you think. When we get him back, and we'll ask him those questions. Thank you.
Okay.
But all right. But meanwhile, before he comes back, there's something that he fell off. Please, when he comes back, we'll bring him back up. I just want to say something about this, the generation that have enjoyed Nigeria, because when growing up, we were like, Nigeria has always been bad.
Yeah.
But it's when you start listening to all these men come up here and speak, then you now understand that there was actually a time Nigeria used to work.
Exactly.
So I can understand their passion, and I can understand why a whole lot of them are coming out now to speak.
Listening to my granddad, I knew Nigeria worked now. And I saw a bit of Nigeria working. Just a bit of it working before everything went south. It's unfortunate. Okay, I think Anaya is back. Anaya, can you hear us? Dr. Mo, okay. Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome. We can hear you, sir. Dr. Mo, hold on.
Okay.
We'll come back to you, Doctor.
I lost you.
So you were taking us on a journey.
I don't know where I lost you. I just kept on talking without knowing you were not hearing me.
We were complaining we were not hearing you. You know, you were wrapping up the conversation on restructuring.
Yeah, I mean, I was telling you that every area of Nigeria is considerably endowed with resources for which many countries of the world are attaining their maximum production and better standards of living. And that if we allowed respective areas of Nigeria to micromanage their areas, the concept of consumption to production will attain fulfillment. And the quality of life in Nigeria will become better. Are you there?
We're here. I see where Peter B, what he means when he says moving Nigeria from consumption to production. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense. I want to bring up my colleague, Emma Saddam.
All right, good evening, sir. Good evening, my brother Oraye. Thank you for the opportunity to host with you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Saddam.
How are you doing today, sir?
Very well, thank you.
It's wonderful sharing this platform with you, tapping from your wealth of knowledge. I would say you are a wonderful storyteller, and I would love to just sit down and listen to you give us more and more about your life journey and what you have encountered as a Nigerian up until this point in time. But I just want to take you on a little question to our presidential candidate. I know that you have endorsed Peter as your candidate. You look at him as someone that is more capable to lead Nigeria at this time. But I want you to share with us now what really informed your decision, why you made that decision amongst all the front runners running for the elections right now. Why Peter Obi?
Yeah, first of all the candidates, the leading candidates in the contest have had exposure to governance at micro and macro levels. For Peter and Kwankwaso at micro levels, even though Kwankwaso has been minister at federal level. But for Atiku, as well as for Bola Tinubu, but for Atiku at federal level. You know, the demonstration effect of Peter's tenure as governor in Anambra is unmatchable. It's outstanding. First, in probity, Peter left a record that nobody else has in Nigeria in terms of transparency, in terms of accountability, in terms of selflessness. I mean, how can you be governor for 8 years and at the end of your tenure, you didn't take one car? I don't know if I've lost you again.
Oh,
I don't know.
I can hear you, sir.
You can hear me. Now, at the end of 8 years, he doesn't take one car away from the state government. He doesn't take 1 naira as salary or pension. You know, just like those of us who served as ministers at the time we served. When I hear that people who are ministers now and legislators take pensions, I begin to wonder whether the one I served in was not the correct one. You know, but there it is. You know, can you hear me?
Very well.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Yes. So you know, he left probity as a worthy example for emulation. Secondly, his conduct of governance brought succor, development to his people. Before Peter became governor, very few schools, secondary schools in Anambra, had science laboratories. Very few had ordinary cars. Very few had good dormitories, not to talk about uniforms or water supply. Peter dug a borehole in every secondary school in Anambra. Peter bought a bus for every secondary school in Anambra. Peter paid teachers timeously and gave allowances. Peter bought science equipment. Peter made Anambra move from number 14 in performance in school certificate in the country to number 1. Peter partnered with the Catholic and the Anglican Church and built hospitals that are teaching hospitals today. The most equipped hospitals in Igbo land now are the ones Peter built in Anambra for state government in partnership with religious organizations. Medical students go there to study, to do their practicals. Professors find meaningful engagement in those places. Tell me where else you find something of that nature. Peter, in 8 years, made Anambra State motorable. Before Peter became governor, majority of the civil servants in Anambra State lived in Enugu State and used to travel a distance of between 1 hour and 1.5 hours to go to work every morning and come back the same day. First of all, what kind of work do they go when they spend that amount of time on the road? Secondly, what do they earn that finances this transportation on a daily basis? Obviously, half of them were not going. They were just going to sign papers or promote a trade in Anambra and do part of teaching or part of working and part of trading in order to make ends meet. He turned it around. Thirdly, Peter saved money. He saved money for Anambra State. And he didn't just save money by refusing to engage in capital development, but by cutting away excesses, things that people indulge in government that just go to nothing except profligacy. And by doing this money, he gave the government credibility to be able to invest in partnership with banks as well as other business endeavors in industrial development. And his predecessors met this money. It was not as if it didn't exist. That showed me a man who was serious with his work. And as governor, he was engaged at the federal level on Economic Council because it showed from his contributions in the National Council of States that he had something to offer. And he was put at the National Finance Council. And he left a record that was unimpeachable. When you are doing well, you are inspired to go on doing. It is very difficult in our era to find a politician who goes to government and does not end up enriching himself. And here is someone who's done well in the private sector and decided to go and show that we can do it better in public sector. And he did so. In civilized climes, people will be begging people like Peter to serve in government. If there was anything in his records that was disgraceful or corrupt, all this while he's been campaigning, it would have been exposed. But we've had testimonies from his head of service, from his secretary to government, from his commissioners, from his chief of staff, from ordinary principals in schools, from reverend fathers who have partnered with him in educational development, reverend sisters, Anglican bishops, testifying to his probity, his fidelity of conscience, his steadfastness in honoring his obligations and his promises. What the hell? When you see something which is good, you can't hide it. So from that point of view, he was allowed to be chairman of Southeast governors beyond the tenure of a Southeast governors. He remained their chairman throughout his 8-year tenure because the governors found in him leadership that was not controversial, that was not overbearing, but was intellectually productive. And the people of the Southeast found succor in the unity of their leadership and their capacity to speak with one voice. Peter runs a family life that is worthy of emulation. First, he's not married to an Igbo girl. For you to marry outside your tribal home in Nigeria, it's not an easy thing. I tried to do it when I was in University of Ibadan. I did everything to surmount the objection of my parents and the parents of my girlfriend, but it was difficult. They just thought that our cultural differences would not make us, have a harmonious existence. We regret it till tomorrow because my parents were wrong. Her parents were wrong. And I would let any of my children today who wants to marry outside Igbo land to do so. Because I'm the wiser. Peter went to Akwa Ibom to marry and married an angel. He married a partner, not a passenger. He married somebody who understood him, his nuances, his passion for humanity, and partnered with him to achieve it. And they had 2 children, sizable, notwithstanding their wealth. They limited themselves to a sizable family. And they encouraged the children to be independent of them and seek your natural endowment and pursue it. You see, these are the things you examine when you're going to give somebody a job. What is his background? Where is he coming from? When I had my birthday, Peter was in the church and I had the opportunity of telling a story. One of Peter's closest friends was my brother-in-law. He's late now, Emeka Nwankwo. In fact, he was his commissioner when he was governor. A number of his classmates were his commissioners. And they used to come to holidays in my house. And you know that first thing in the morning, before I wake up, Peter and Emeka, my brother-in-law, will be washing my cars. They both come from very well-to-do families. Their fathers were millionaires. But they'll be washing my cars first thing in the morning. And other people I was paying school fees for who were on holidays were busy sleeping while they were washing the cars. Humility is a God-given virtue. Peter has it natural with him. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
He has it as a God-given virtue. It comes to him naturally. He was nicknamed Okute, which means stone, in CKC, his secondary school. It shows the moral fiber of his strength of conviction, his capacity to wade difficult situations. Nobody has gone to southern Borno to campaign in recent times. This is where the security advised him not to go to. This is where his own campaign staff, his own security said to him, don't go. The army said you won't land in our compound there. But he dared them. And he went there. And before then, he had gone there without being a presidential candidate and giving 45 million to the citizens in that place to help their rehabilitation in refugee camps when he was not even thinking of becoming a presidential candidate. But as a presidential candidate, no other presidential candidate has been there. He's been there. You don't want to be a president of a country and you're afraid to go to the dangerous areas of your country. How do you know what you're going to solve? The moral fiber in this man's character, his resolve, his determination, his daredevil attitude is what we need in a period like this in Nigeria. You have to do extraordinary things to save our country. I feel ashamed to be at the dying end of my life and seeing my country worse than I met it. I told you that my children took alternative to practical in school SAT. But I did practical, and I told you the chemistry practicals that I did. It no longer exists. People are duped today. They go on laptops and dupe people. It's a favorite pastime. And women run after them because they are the people who make quick money. So women run after them to get money. But that was not our example in our time. In our time, we were reading Chino Achebe, Cyprian Ekwensi, Wole Soyinka, J.P. Clark, and all we did was try to emulate them. We tried, I could read Julius Caesar from the Ides of March Akam to the Mother of Caesar. We watched films that displayed Shakespearean plays that we were taking in our literature so that we could understand it better. But today, they are just interested in seductive films. The moral fiber of the society is lost. The ambition to discover knowledge is waning. So, my brother, when you tell me why do I want a man like Peter, I see nobody else who has the passion he has, the determination he has. You can't take me to where you've not been to. When Peter went to CKC, it was run by Reverend Fathers. It was a disciplined school. He saw a science lab, which our children don't see anymore. So he knows how to take Anambra back to a science lab, and he's done it there. So how can he do it for Nigeria? When Peter was a governor, he was being called to the National Economic Council to advise on economics. When Peter was a businessman in England, he was one of the businessmen who got overdraft without collateral because of his fidelity, his reliability, his character. When he came back to Nigeria, he took commanding heights in very sensitive sectors of our economies. How many banks has he been on the board and have been chairman? Have those banks failed? When you are writing somebody's recommendation, you have to pin in on verifiable criteria. What about the others? We just suddenly saw people get rich without seeing what they did to get rich. Come on. It's not done like that. The whole country in the world recruits its leadership from people who have aggrandized themselves from public covers. It recruited from people who have a vision of where they want to take the country to. And needless to say, when you listen to the campaign rhetoric, you see a man who has a program. For every issue, he tells you what he wants to do and how he will do it. What else do you need to hear? I don't need to blame you because I already see that the people of your generation are hearkening to it. And all the pollsters, including Bloomberg, are saying that what you are doing shows that you are in the majority. If you are not, I will begin to question whether we are responsible for you people or whether your pregnancies were obtained from outside Nigeria. We are so anxious to see you take over and walk with Peter and take us to the dreamland. Delay is dangerous.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Mo, I'm sure you've been following this conversation.
This is, oh yeah. Wow. Nwodo he's not just an eloquent speaker, he's a veteran, he's somebody who, he can raise the dead, he can convince, he can de-radicalize any person, and it's such a privilege and an honor to have him on this space, to listen, to learn, to relearn, and just to be under his influence and his voice. And while he's speaking and I'm listening and having the opportunity and privilege to have done more than half of the campaign with our principal, to see how, for example, you talk about the north central states in Nigeria where it's almost like overwhelming, being on the ground to see the following is almost cult-like, just like what we saw even in Lagos yesterday and what, we see in some of the places, except for the core north who are actually waiting for us to harvest them. And vis-a-vis listening to a mentor like him and, buttressing the point of who PO is and the messaging that we need to take out, it's really impressive. And if you're under this kind of influence and tutelage, everyone will become a spokesperson for this
Precisely.
campaign, which is what we should be,
Precisely.
you know. And that's why I'm very excited about, you know, the living legend conversation that is going on. And I don't think anybody fits into the profile to answer the question I want to ask our leader as a former leader of the Oneze Indigbo, especially given your work, you know, to unite the Indigbo and strengthen the links with the rest of the country. We would like to hear, you know, directly from you, sir, on whether Indigo is united as a common front, you know, behind Peter Obi for president. And I ask this, we ask this specifically on the context and the backdrop of the discordant and tunes in some of the quarters, you know, within the southeastern states, you know, even with given knowing that they are the biggest beneficiary, and with the golden opportunity that this is, you know, for the southeast to produce the next presidency of Nigeria. I don't see anybody fit enough to be able to give us a cohesive answer to this. If you would, sir, please do indulge us and engage us on this.
You will not believe me when I tell you that the Igbos are the least tribalistic Nigerians. Look, if you go to every part of Nigeria outside Igbo land, outside the indigenous population in that place, the next highest population is Igbo. Are you listening to me?
We're listening to you, sir. Yes.
Yes. Secondly, if you take a census of the economic investments in the place, whether they are hospitals, whether they are schools, whether they are retail outlets, whether they are industrial undertakings, if you take a census of the self-help projects, whether they are roads, you would find that the Igbos dominate it more than anybody else. The Igbos believe that being at home and feeling important that you have conquered the home is a sign of weakness. Your capacity to go beyond your borders and create new areas of habitation for them is what gives them kicks. And they quickly learn the language where they are and become part of the society and dress like them. The only thing they find difficult to do is to change their religion. So if you are looking for the most detribalized Nigerians, they are Igbos. They are Igbos. Number two, the same way they are adventurous in business, they are very adventurous in politics. Igbos, you will find, are the people who belong to all the political parties. No doubt about that. So I won't here tell you that Peter Obi commands 100% of Igbos. No, it's impossible. It cannot happen. If it happens, it means that it is not Igbos anymore. But you see, there is also a strong feeling amongst Igbos since the end of the Civil War that they have been marginalized from the governance of Nigeria. And the prospect of an Igbo man being president is a great romance for them to embrace. But you see, Igbos have run for president, but none has galvanized the interest and enthusiasm that Peter Obi has in Igbo land. Why? Because he has proven in Igbo land as a governor that he can do well in governance. So for them, he's a fitting export of Igbo land to Nigerian governance. He's a great ambassador of good governance for Igbo. So they see him as a champion, somebody worthy of exporting to Nigeria. But you see, there are also other Igbos who are political adventurers who would like, you know, joining other political parties for different other reasons. You see, when you are in a market, people are in a market for different reasons. Some go into politics because they want to make money. Some go into politics because they want to get appointment. Some go into politics because they want a better society. How many people can government give contracts? How many people can government give appointment? Very few. The broad majority of Nigerians are looking for a government that will change the standard of living. Look at the exodus from this country to America and Europe and now to China. Look at the deportation from all kinds of useless countries in Asia that were begging us to come to Nigeria before. We want to turn Nigeria into a place other parts of the world would want to come to. And we have the capacity to do it. And Okute will do it if he becomes president. Sorry, I called him Okute. That's Peter's nickname. So, I think that to look for 100% support of Igbos for Peter to be becoming president of Nigeria is to look for an illusion. It doesn't happen. Igbos are not that way. Igbos are not tribalistic. They are adventurous. But the truth of the matter is that since Azikiwe and Okpara and Ojukwu, I haven't seen an Igbo man who wins acceptance of Igbo respect as much as Peter Obi. And I say this from an advantaged position that I've occupied to be able to sense the feelings of Igbo as head of their cultural organization. Peter has the mien of humility which attracts every Igbo man. You see, when you have money and you make so much noise, the Igbo think you are a drum, you are an empty basket that cannot hold anything. When you have money and you carry yourself with humility and modesty, they respect you more. And that is what Peter represents. When you are devotional in your religion, as Peter is, Peter comes from a strong Catholic family. His brother is a reverend father and rector of a seminary. His sister is a reverend sister. Both of them have given up marriage in their lives and sacrificed their lives to God. It's very, very difficult to find a family that can donate a son and a daughter to God. So anyone who knows him to that level knows the strength of moral conviction of that family. So for the Igbo man who dissects a person's character, he looks into your pedigree. Peter's pedigree show him as somebody coming from a family that has fear of God. Peter's pedigree show him as somebody who cannot be involved in theft, in corruption. And so a majority of Igbos are bound to be attracted to this without question. And he has not embezzled money. And God has blessed him with wealth, and he's quite content with his wealth. And he does not display his wealth flagrantly. Peter doesn't have a phantom. He doesn't have a Rolls Royce. He doesn't have a jet. But he has more money than those who have those things. He would rather go and invest it in a motherless baby's home. He would rather go and invest it in southern Borno to look after the displaced people there. For Peter, he thinks that it's extortionate, it is devilish, it is ungodly to acquire more comfort to himself when there are people created like him who are in want and in desperation. That is the Peter that I know. And I when I look at Peter's emergence as a presidential candidate, I think it is divinely inspired. We could not have gotten a better person from these climes like Peter. Here is a selfless man who has a passion for service and whose uprightness is unquestionable. I mean, I wish that God would give me the life to be alive to see Peter president, and I can have another conversation with you, vindicating some of the assertions that I have made here.
Sir, Peter is going to be president in a few weeks from now.
By the grace of God. Yeah, you make me sleep well tonight.
Oh my God.
You make me sleep well tonight. As a father, I am burdened. I am grieving.
I can imagine.
I am sighing every day. Will this chalice pass me by, and will there be a different thing? No father wants his child to live in a worse society than he found himself in. But I am seeing my children living in worse standards than I did. I told you how I used to play football in the fields of Kolkam, how I used to have shower in the fields of Kolkam, and my father was living in GRA as minister. We had football teams. There is an area in Enugu called urban area. It is like saying Kirikiri area of Lagos. I mean, that is the worst of the worst areas of the worst neighborhood. As I was living in Independence Layout, the first minister's quarters in Enugu, but we had a football team engaging urban area. And urban area children used to come and play with us, and we used to go there and play with them. We were children of ministers, or children of orderlies of ministers, or drivers of ministers, all living in Independence Layout. And they were children of nobody in Face Me, I Face You apartments. And we had friends there. We used to go and visit them. We used to bring them to our house to have 3 square meals over the weekend, which they couldn't afford in their homes. That was the kind of Nigeria I grew up. But they had water 24 hours. That was not their problem. They had electricity. But today, nobody has. I have a diesel generator. I have a petrol generator. And the question is whether I have found money now to buy the fuel. I had to put my gate man on standby to ensure that I had power during the duration of this interview. Otherwise, for purposes of pecuniary difficulties, I would have just stayed in darkness for some time and waited for NEPA to come back. So I do hope that what Peter is igniting in terms of the resurgence of the youth of Nigeria, and this knows no ethnic bounds. You see, this is why, while I was President General of Ohanese, working with Chief Edwin Clark as head of PANDEF, and Chief Ayo Adebanjo as head of Afenifere, and Dr. Pogu as head of the Middle Belt, we decided to come together and form the Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum. At some point, we invited the Northern Elders Forum, and we were almost going to make it a complete unity of the whole of the ethnic groups in Nigeria. We still are working on it, and between Ohanese and Northern Elders Forum, we have a committee now, and we meet periodically to ensure that we do everything we can to ensure that there is greater unity in the country and that government is answerable to the people. So we were, if you like, precursor. We were the forerunners of this movement that our children has taken over from us. And I'm very grateful to people of your age that you're standing up for it. Do not relent. Make history.
Amen.
Nelson Mandela made history in circumstances like this. This is the time. Patrice Lumumba would have made history but for his death.
Yeah.
Kwame Nkrumah made history by domesticating independence struggle in all African countries. And we rose against colonial rule and formed our countries, but we lost them somewhere. Your generation has a challenge, following the examples of leaders like Peter Obi, to rejuvenate our country and its national values and ethics. I think it is doable.
Definitely.
And in less than 2 weeks, you have to work your ass out.
Yes, sir.
The work is not over. And I thank you for the initiative.
Okay, sir.
We've got,
Wow.
are you,
Are you there, sir? Okay, sir. Your network is your line is breaking a bit. Can you still hear us, sir? Sir, are you still there?
I went through in the students, of University of Ibadan, made me more Nigerian.
Oh, Chief, can you hear us,
I
sir?
think his line,
Your line is
I think
breaking.
I think his network is really crackling, and so
Being
Yes, your
voted
network
but
is really cracked.
overwhelmingly by Yorubas, Igbos, Northerners to be president of students, without recourse to my rebel label.
mm,
There was perfect reconciliation. I was considered for who I was, not whether I was Igbo.
mm,
I was considered for who I was.
mm,
I almost married a Yoruba girl, but it was impossible because of parental refusal. You know, and that was the Nigeria in which I grew up.
mm. Thank
Hello, sir. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, my dear.
Oh, okay. Sorry, we lost you. We were losing you for a bit there. Wow, thank you so much, sir. You've had me emotional all evening. I think I've run out of tissues, and I really want to particularly thank you for taking us down memory lane. Reminding us what it means, to live in a functional society, particularly education wise. Because young people now these days will not know. Many young people do not know that there can be a better that it can have better. I remember growing up,
Mm.
going to a public school. There was a time that I was so depressed because I would go to class and the teacher, because I was a very hungry young person, I was hungry for knowledge, and I know a lot of young people are like that. But I could just tell that what I was getting was not it, was just not good enough. And I remember working very hard, taking two jobs outside of school just to be able to just to afford to pay for a private institution. I was so sad. I mean, it was such a terrible experience. So I mean, I think you should come more on these platforms like this to just remind Nigerians. I mean, I love how you've boy, sorry, I'm so emotional right now. Thank you so much, sir. Young people
Be,
these
be
days
careful
only know
because
mediocrity. We only
be
know
careful.
mediocrity.
Be careful because I lost my wife 9 years ago. You will sweep me off my feet if you continue with this compliment. Now, but let me tell you something I didn't tell you. Do you know that when I was in primary school, you took turns to clean the blackboard? And whenever you clean the blackboard, you would write the date, you would write the direction of the wind, you would write the inches of rainfall. And how was this possible? In our football field, on the edge of the football field, there was a concrete pillar which had a windmill, and it was calibrated northwest, east, northwest, not south, east, west, southwest, southeast, and stuff like that. And there was a beaker calibrated in inches. And in the rainy season, when we come to school in the morning, you'll go and see the number of inches of rainfall. So when you clean the blackboard, you write the date, the inches of rainfall, and the direction of the wind. And for every assignment you do for the teacher, you must write it on top of your paper before it is marked. Number two, each one of us had a row of farm. And during the farm season, we cultivated the farm and we were examined on the farm. And if you were Igbo now, I would have told you all the yam species that I planted there, Abala, Mupok, Oak, Abi, and what have you. The cocoa yams that I put there. I could tell you the vegetables, whether they were ordinary green vegetables or what they call ogo water leaf or what they call angara leaves and stuff like that. We harvested these things. Of course, our teachers took the harvest, but we were examined on how productive your farm was. So our education was comprehensive. You were taught English language, arithmetic, geography, history, Bible knowledge. You were taught athletics during athletics season. You were taught football during football season. You were taught hockey during hockey season. You know, the women played basketball. We were taught handwork. You know, we during handwork you could make brooms. The women made sweaters. They made mufflers. You know, and you couldn't leave primary school without being educated in some basic handwork. That's how we all grew up. And nobody was excused from it. Everybody had to learn some handwork. But you were allowed to choose which one you wanted to learn. And so was our religious instruction. Very strong. I was a mass server. I was senior sacristan when I was in CIC. So education was comprehensive. When we were in secondary schools, we used to go on debating competitions in nearby secondary schools. We chose speakers and they gave you a topic you researched on and you defended a point of view on that topic. So it was not just a matter of going to school and going back to your father's house the same day. In the dormitory where I lived, I was dormitory prefect at a point. I had to make sure everybody was in bed at night. I had to make sure lights out were out at a particular time. Our shower ran 24 hours. We were never short of water. Throughout my stay in secondary school, I had shower every morning, although it was cold shower. We never had hot shower that time. It was difficult during the hammer time, but we were able to do it. We marked the field. I know what 100 yards is. I know what 220 is. I know what 440 is. I know how many times you run around the field for it to be 1 mile. But it doesn't happen anymore. Our children don't even know what a hockey stick is. You know, it's incredible. You know, but that's how we went to school. It doesn't exist anymore. And anywhere they see an open space in a township, rather than let it be a football field, they build a house on it. So many schools exist in Enugu where I live today without a football field, and it is a secondary school. I cannot understand it. It's a secondary school. The children have nowhere to do their, physical education. Very bad, extremely bad. And you see, you carry this jaundice and limited exposure into public service. You meet people with other countries who have had that kind of exposure. You go on tour in another country and they say, would you like to play tennis with me? Or would you like to play hockey or badminton or whatever? And you don't even understand what the game is all about. That's the country we've degenerated into. And you ask
Wow.
a child who has left secondary school to write a good letter. He can't write a letter. You ask him to write a story about his holidays. He can't even write a story. Speak good English. It is impossible. And they go to interview in the embassies and people reject them. Not because they have bad character, but they don't exude their certificate. So we need leadership that is comprehensive. Leadership that is a model. You can look at it and say, he's telling me, do as I do, not as I say. And as you all brace up for this election and for the outcome of it, I urge you not to stop with making sure that we get the right governance. But when the government comes, keep your movement alive so that people live up to their responsibilities. I was going to join the NSAS movement when they were going on. I wanted to be part of their demonstrations, but the police dispersed us. Because I believe in what they are doing. This is what I did when Gowon was head of state. I led students from Ibadan to Lagos. And I walked all Ikorodu Road, walking towards Dodam Barracks, where the army and the police stopped us. And we all sat on the main road and said, shoot us, kill us. That was how they toppled Gowon. Because they saw that the youths could no longer take it. I was part of that movement. And so when I see what you do today, I thank God that it's not violent. your intellectual force, your foray in the political arena, it has shown the deadwoods that they have no reason being there. If I can retire from politics, what are they doing there? They should let you come in and make a difference. You know, in 1979, I was already in politics and I was 27. And I became special assistant to president. And by the time I was 30, I was already minister of state for civil aviation. Why shouldn't you be? It depends on how you expose yourself to be knowledgeable and to be able to offer an alternative opinion that can change renaissance retardation factors. Our country has to change. And don't relent. Don't stop. I can tell you that Peter Obi is a human being and he gets tired. He gets frustrated. He gets disappointed. But his greatest energy is from the youth of Nigeria who are ready to die for his struggle. When I saw him the other day in Kaduna, I saw this. When I saw him the other day going to Alaba Market, I saw this. When I saw a boy stop his motorcade with his body in the streets of Lagos, I saw a boy who believed in what he was fighting for. Go on, folks. We, your fathers, are behind you. We will do everything to ensure that we rise from these weltering valleys of desolation and despair into the glowing mountains of recovery, of affluence, and of great development for our country.
Wow. Thank you so much, sir. Okay, before we go to our speakers, Omar, I'll come to you in a bit. We'll come to you in a bit. I need to ask you a political question. So this question has been raging for a while. Now there's calls for today calls there's been calls for a rotation of power. Calls for rotation of power between the North and the South have been resisted in some quarters, and some people think that the candidacy of Atiku and Kwakwaso is being viewed as opposition to power shifts to the South. Given that, of course, the North has held power, is wrapping up an 8-year term by President Buhari. Now, the question we've been asking in the last few days, we've been asking our guests is, what does this portend for Nigeria? What are the dangers of not having power rotation? And have you been in touch? Have you been in talks? Any talks that you can share with us with leaders from the North? We know that an organization like the Northern Elders Forum (NEF) have been have been sitting on the fence. They've not endorsed any candidates, and there seems to be a slight reluctance by Northern leaders, to fully back this candidacy. But I would love for you to give us a background, if any, of your conversations with leaders from the North, so that we can unite Nigerians behind our principle.
With the greatest respect for my northern friends, a lot of the northern establishment have refused to embrace the abundant resources of agriculture and animal husbandry in the north and have depended on government for livelihood. It's not possible. The north is a vastly rich area. This debate as to whether leadership should come from the north or south is a non-issue. We will get there where a leader is a good leader, whether he comes from the north or from the south, so long as he shows the attributes of goodness, of vision, of hard work, of incorruptibility, we will follow him. But there is this, the irony of this thing is that when you talk to people in the north, they tell you that they have the population. And that once they have the population, they will determine who rules Nigeria. And that if they are more numerous, it will come from them. But you see, the jury is still out as to who has the population. Because if you take the population census done by the white man when we were under colonial rule, there was not this disparity that you have today. And today, there is no genuine head count in our country because they have not made your national identity card an emblem for you to access your citizenship rights. Secondly, our borders have not been policed in such a manner that there has been such an influx of people who are not Nigerians into Nigerians. There are foreigners who display our permanent voters card. There are foreigners who display, you know, our credentials for registration in population census and tell you where they were registered and where they belong to when they are not nationalized. Our borders are extremely porous. If it is possible to mine gold in Zamfara and to mine the diamonds in Borno State, and planes land there without you knowing that there is an airport there, I mean, anything is possible. Lorry loads of people can be brought there. If it's possible to drill our oil in Lake Chad without our knowing in the national accounts that anybody is drilling oil there, anything is possible. And so government is being used to protect, I come from this side, I come from the other side. Because of the tempo, supposing the oil finishes, supposing the diamond finishes, supposing the gold finishes, how do you sustain a national economy on the basis of theft? And you have taken away the young people who should have been in agriculture doing what Netherlands is doing into an army for giving protection for this illicit mining and drilling. And we have a national security that turns a blind eye to it. And you recruit the headship of this national security on the basis of where they come from rather than their efficiency. What kind of country is this? The issues are not being discussed. It is the privileges that are being discussed. So long as people have privileges they wouldn't have gotten without the protection of government, they claim the government must still remain with us. That's absolute balderdash. We want an open government where every Nigerian who has the capacity can have. And I believe capacity is not limited to one area. I've been in class with Northerners who are more brilliant than myself. And I respect them for their brilliance. The South does not have a monopoly of brilliance. But there is some kind of ethnicity that has grown with our politics and has compartmentalized our thoughts according to our ethnic areas, and we need to shake it. I mean, I may be different because I went to school in Ibadan and I was the privilege of the generosity of Yoruba love for me when I ran for election. And so I'm detribalized. I went to school in Jos, I went to school in Ibadan, and I have worked with northern heads of states who've treated me as if I was their child. I used to walk into Shagari's room to bring out his files. I used to eat on the same table with him. I used to travel with Abdul Salam Abubakar, and I used to use his phone to call his family for him to talk to them. And at the end, he would tell me to call my own family too with his phone, which was a security phone. And I was considering myself undeserving of the privilege of using a presidential phone to call my wife. But he gave it to me as if I was his junior brother. Shagari treated me as if I was his son. When I wedded, he gave me a gold wristwatch. He gave my wife a gold bracelet. He gave us a luncheon and gave us very good advice. He told my wife, the greatest thing you owe your husband is fidelity. Once you give it to him and he insults you, come to me, I will defend you. You know, that was the paternal love I got from President Shehu Shagari. May his soul rest in peace. You know, General Abdul Salam Abubakar, General Ibrahim Babangida were my close senior brothers and friends. You know, outside of work, we indulge in jokes you will not believe that a minister and the head of state will indulge in. They loved me with a passion. And so when you talk about this tribalism, I just begin to wonder, where is this? It's just that the people who benefit from the perquisites of government on account of where they come from, rather than on account of their proficiency, their hard work, their intelligence, aggrandize it. And they do not allow the people who are proficient from various parts of the country to shine. There is no part of Nigeria that does not have people who are intelligent and endowed with all kinds of skills. I have lots of friends in the north who are brilliant in their chosen areas of endeavor. And they bring something to the table that is unique. But when you use this tribal thing, you just envelop everybody in a quota system. So you bring the people you like, not the people who are qualified for it. But I do hope that an Obi presidency changes the narration and lifts our country from the wildering valleys of desolation to the mountains of prosperity and hope. It is about time. It must happen.
Amen.
Amen too.
Thank you, sir. I think let's open the floor. Let's take some questions from our speakers. People are itching to ask you questions. So I'll allow people to ask you questions. Right? Let me start with my brother Omar. Omar, good evening. You have the platform, please.
Thank you very much, my dear brother Saddam. Um, to begin with, I would like to know how many minutes I've got to make my
Just 2
submission.
minutes. Just 2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right. Okay, that's fair enough. My questions are embedded in my submissions as well. So I'm hoping that he would be able to answer my questions as long as being able to assimilate my submissions. Let me start with the fact that there's one particular thing that I've observed, which is the fact that a lot of people from different regions of the country, other than the Southeast, feel a certain degree of discomfort, which, depending on the perspective you're looking at it from, is justifiable, and from another perspective is not justifiable. And it's the idea of Aaron sees nepotism. And this is me taking you down memory lane. And I'm very sure that you were aware of the incidents of January to July, January 15th to July 29th, 1966. And in as much as we would do our best, I mean, I'm glad that we have a lot of intelligent people on this platform, like our very cerebral person of Mr. Valo Zigbo and Dr. Mo Paul, people who have actually been very invested in the issues of this country over the years. If you look at it, there are quite a lot of sentiments that exists from way back, and still makes quite a number of people feel a little bit uneasy when it comes to the idea of an Igbo candidacy in Nigeria today. Now, this is where I'm going to put my question to you. I love Peter Obi, and I've been supporting him and advocating for his candidacy over the last 7 months. But there's something that remains a very pressing question when I speak to my own tribesmen. And I like the fact that you said that you are a detribalized Nigerian. That's very interesting, because I personally don't believe that there's a detribalized Nigerian. I believe that there is an element of ethnic sentiment at the bottom line of everything that we do as a nation. The only reason that exists is not because we are bad people. Neither is it because every individual is ethnocentric in nature. No. It's just because of the fundamental makeup of our country. Now, that fundamental makeup brings us to a very interesting
40
question.
seconds.
A lot of people,
Seconds more.
yes, sir. A lot of people are very, very interested, especially those from the different regions that Peter Obi does not belong to. They're very interested in one thing. How do you allay the fears of those who believe that the Biafra sentiment could somehow seep into Peter Obi's candidacy? How do you allay the fears of people who believe that the Igbos? Now, this is the very, very interesting question, because a lot of people might want to sidestep it or shy away from it. But I believe that Saddam and myself and Cizo, we host the biggest political space on Twitter. And I can tell you that the sentiments run deep. So, which begs the question, how do you allay? I'm a Yoruba man. I'm from the Southwest, like my sister Kibati here on this platform. How do you allay the fears of people? Because I spoke to a friend of mine, and many people that I've spoken to over this electioneering season, they still continue to believe, irrespective.
Honor, I may interrupt you because in 10 minutes our time will be over.
Oh, yeah, yeah, don't worry. I'm
And,
going to narrow it down as quickly as possible.
Mm.
Irrespective of the level of respect and love they have for Peter Obi, there's still that underlying fear of, okay, if we have this guy as president, what would he do to the collective makeup of our nation? What would it do to the unifying sense of the country that we have? A lot of people believe that Peter Obi is coming to split Nigeria in the way that benefits the Southeast. I don't believe that. I believe that is complete balderdash. But from somebody that understands the man himself and understands the psyche of the Southeast going into these elections, how would you allay these fears? Thank you so much, sir.
Well, to begin with, the composition of Nigeria today, the Southeast has only 5 states out of 36 states. Any vote that is going to be taken in Nigeria in its present political structures, namely the National Assembly, will have the Southeast in a minority. So it is practically impossible for Peter to be as president of Nigeria under our present constitution, under which he will be elected, even if he has the most strange and unusual Biafran motivation to be able to enact a legislation that will change the status quo of Nigeria without the agreement of the component parts of Nigeria. That is axiomatic. It doesn't require, even somebody who didn't go to school doesn't need to be proved. This doesn't need to be proven to him. Anybody who is saying this is just being semantic. He's just trying to give a dog a bad name in order to hang it. The Southeast have 5 states out of 36 states. So how can 5 people vote against 31 people and change the structure of Nigeria without a consensus? It is practically impossible. Even though you may say that the population of the Southeast deserves to have more than 5 states, but under the war measure of containment, we are 5 states, and there's nothing an Igbo president can do to engineer a legislation in Nigeria that is not supported by all the component parts of Nigeria to the advantage of the Igbos. That is a non-starter. So this is pure hogwash in propaganda. It is unattainable. It's inconceivable. And in any case, the Igbos derive their strength from Nigeria. Look, if you leave all the Igbos in the Southeast, they will not be able to survive. So the Igbos need a Nigeria where they can establish their businesses in all parts of Nigeria. So they still need the Nigerian structure to survive. And I think that thing, and don't forget, the war ended in 1967. This is 2023, and if you check now, I would
That's
say,
ended in 1970, yeah.
sorry, 1970, started in 1967. This is 2023. So the war ended about 43 years ago. I mean, is it 53 years ago? And let me tell you, a number of the Igbos today who were born at the end of the war are 53 years old. Those who went to the war are almost extinct. I was in Biafra, but I'm 70. I'm going to be 71 this year. My mother died at 79, and my father died at 72. So if I live as long as my father, I'll be 2 years more here. So, if you have that morbid fear about the Igbo Biafrans, it doesn't exist. But, if you continue to treat Igbos as if they were outsiders in their country, and they sit for an exam and they pass into a university and get a cutoff mark of 67, and you admit somebody who has a cutoff mark of 17 and they don't get in, how do you want them to feel? They live in the same country. They go to an exam, somebody scores 17%, they score 67%, and they say they can't get into the university. How do you want to feel if you are a citizen of that country? You go to an application for employment, they put a test for you, a written test, and you score 90%, and somebody scores 20%, and he's taken. How do you feel?
But
Do you really feel that?
excuse me, sir. As a Yoruba man, I applied for the Nigerian Defense Academy right after I finished from Command Secondary School, and I was still declined simply because I'm a Yoruba man, and
And
the
obviously,
quota for
you
my
will not
school
feel
that
happy.
the quota for my school has already been filled.
The point I'm making is that whether you're a Yoruba man, an Efik man, an Ibibio man, a Hausa man, a Fulani man, and Gash, wherever you are from Nigeria, you should have equal rights to amenities in Nigeria. There's affirmative action in America, but it is not at the expense of merit. No country grows by changing standards. Pass is pass and fail is fail. You cannot promote somebody to a position he cannot hold simply because you want a quota system. Is that right?
No, sir.
What you do is to emphasize more investment in educationally disadvantaged areas and bring them up to shape so that within a period of 5 years, there is nobody who is educationally disadvantaged anymore. But
So
when people decide,
how do you encourage people who don't prioritize education? That's my last question. Thank you so much, sir.
well, we have to have a government policy in which education is a right in Nigeria. And every child must have a right to that education. And you can't climb to the next ladder if you don't have it. We must make it compulsory. Why should one man marry 10 wives that are not educated? Are we building a better society? Doesn't make sense to me. We cannot hate some people because they come from one part of the country and say they will not have good education. That's wrong. Any leader in Nigeria who advocates it does not mean well for Nigeria. The answer is education. If we are all educated, some of these things that are issues will no longer be issues anymore. And you know that by the time we're all educated, our values will be coterminous. They will synchronize. They will be compatible. And, miscegenation, marriage across ethnic lines will become more. And very soon, nobody will remember where you come from and nobody is interested. I know my friends who are Igbos in Lagos who have lived all their lives in Lagos and will never come back to Igbo land anymore. They probably come when they bring back their corpses. Because Lagos is their home. I know those who live in northern Nigeria and speak better Hausa than Hausas and who will never come back again except when they bring back their corpses. They are in their retirement ages and they are still living there. That's the Nigeria of my dream. There is something beautiful about each one of us. And we are very lucky to be all concentrated in one place so that there can be cultural miscegenation and we can benefit from what each other has. Sheikh Shebeni. Oga, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. I can hear
I just
you.
I just asked you a rhetorical question in Yoruba. I said Sheikh Shebeni, you know?
Sir. One
Yeah.
last question. One last question. So, in the event that PO
Omar, we have to
in
move
the
forward.
event,
Omar, we have to move
no,
forward.
oh yes, I want us to move forward. But in the event that Peter Obi ends up as president, what advice would you have for the Igbos in Lagos, considering the post-electoral violence that they are likely to be exposed to? Because this is something that, irrespective of how much we like to be optimistic, there is no denying of the fact that in the case where Peter Obi wins the presidential election, Bola Tinubu via Jide Sanwo-Olu, who is most likely to win the Lagos governorship election, how would the violence that is likely to be meted out on Igbos, how would it be handled? Are we going to have some sort of federal power addressing that? Because we have to protect the people. We cannot lead them down to the slaughter in the name of canvassing for a candidate. What if it all goes wrong? This is my own concern.
Well, that's why we have the Peace Committee of General Abdul Salam Abubakar. I am sure that that question should go to them. But you see, our people, there are people who can adjust to any situation. Believe you me. If you know how we lived in Biafra, you know, you would not believe that. We ate lizards as meat in Biafra. We ate lizards as meat. We drank water from polluted wells. I'm telling you. We ate leaves that were not edible. Some people died of it before we stopped eating. Igbos can adjust themselves to all sorts of situations. And look, all Yorubas are not as you frame them to be. I mean, my concept of the Yoruba man is not the thuggery paint that you display in this question. There are some Yorubas who will resist Igbos being treated in that way. Just because their brother won an election, then you want to kill them. No. And don't forget, Yorubas live in Igbo land. They live in northern Nigeria and so on. And nobody would like his brother to be treated that way. I'm sure that the national security apparatus will come to play. And so will our religious and traditional rulers come to play when we have apprehension of that kind of explosion coming. And so will ordinary innocent citizens come to defend people. Don't forget that there was a pogrom in northern Nigeria when Saramadu Bello of blessed memory was killed. And I know Igbos who were hidden by northerners. And they were not killed in the pogrom. And they kept them in hiding for 6 months, for 1 year, until the tempers cooled down. And they stayed there and were saved from the war. And they grew up in northern Nigeria. And we only saw them at the end of the war. They were northerners who couldn't see that carnage. So they took them in and hid them in their inner recesses. And they were giving them food once a day in the night. They were creeping to their hideouts to give them those food. And they were taking their refuse and going to dispose of them. And they did it for 6 months, 1 year. This country has people who are resilient. And we have so much that hold us together. I mean, I don't know how I can fight a Yoruba man in my life after going to school in Ibadan. I don't know how I can fight a Fulani or an Hausa man after the way I was treated by Shehu Shagari as boss, or by Ibrahim Babangida, or by General Abubakar. These people treated me as if I was their brother or their son. So as you go through this, you become detribalized. And a number of Igbos who have gone through this and lived in other parts of our country have become increasingly detribalized. And as we get to this crunch, everybody won't be mad. Your people, the Yorubas, are urban and cosmopolitan. And there are people who are socially misogynist. They relate with people very easily. And there may be spices of tribal anger, but they will be contained by the majority who are not like that. That's my belief.
All right, thank you very much, sir. We'll take like maybe 3 more, 4 more speakers.
Maybe we should ask
Okay,
him if
I
he
thought
has.
it was 8 o'clock
Do you have the
already.
time? Do you have the
Sir?
time for more questions?
Oh yeah, your time is up, sir. Do you want to give us extra time, sir? People want to ask you questions, sir. I don't know if you can indulge us a little bit more.
No, it depends on whether they can allow you more minutes. But
Yeah,
I hope
they
you'll be kind enough not to exhaust the capacity of an old man.
yeah. So can we take 30 minutes more, sir, please?
No, take 15, sir.
15, okay. Okay, sir. And you would utilize that
You know,
if
okay, 20.
sir,
If I have
let me say something, sir.
a late dinner, it will bounce on my health.
yeah,
It's just the dinner, sir. If not, Pa Adebajo was here. He's 95, and he gave us extra 45 minutes. So, if you're younger than him by like 20 years, so you should not use age, on this young people.
That longevity is not something that comes to everybody. Some age factor. But let's carry on and see how far we can go.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, please, Dr. Nasa, please, your question in a minute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Listening to Chief Nnia Nwodo is a kind of taking a blood tonic. I have been privileged to know him, sit with him at Semulumba before I left Nigeria. So my question is this: you have touched it with the Omar question, but I have to ask again. Like, as somebody who has been the president of Ohaneze Ndigbo, and as at the same time you are still being part of what is being discussed at that level. This bigotry of a thing has a political undertone. Is there any kind of discussion around this kind tribal and religious bigotry, which is being flagged off during political season at that circle of Ohaneze and other part of that kind of association, sir? Thank you.
Yes, did you say it's Chinaza? Uh, Thank you. I didn't know we were parishioners together. Thank you for admiring me. Don't forget I'm single, so be careful. Now, I would like to say that this matter is exaggerated. I did tell you earlier on that I belong to an association called the Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum. It comprises of people from 4 zones of Nigeria. That is to say, the Southeast, the South-South, the Middle Belt, and the Southwest. And this is intended to bring about cohesion and better understanding. And you know that its leadership really reflects the leadership of the different subgroups. It may not reflect all the leadership, but it's unquestionably part of the leadership of each of the segments of the Southern and Middle Belt Leadership Forum. Now, secondly, between Ohaneze and the Northern Elders Forum, there is a continuous meeting. In fact, we've formed a steering committee of 10, 5 from each side, who discuss, raise issues they need us to look into, and we look into it from time to time. And at various fora of government, whether it's in the legislature, in the executive, or in the judiciary, there's a mixed breed of people from various parts of the country who form the friendship and a working relationship that promotes better understanding. Now, I believe that in the universities, people of your generation are forming friendships that cut across these lines. And so some of the things that are inspired by politicians are not homogeneous. They do not have the acceptability of everyone. And much as we should be looking out for him, because there may be flashpoints whose conflagration can engulf all of us if we do not remain alert, vigilant, and ready to fight back. So my reaction is no. There are always deviants in a society, and they never overcome a greater part of the society. As long as a greater part of us have our heads skewed in the right direction and accommodate each other's differences with happiness and relish, because nobody is identical to the other. I mean, the fact that we speak different languages does not make us inhuman. We're all human beings created in the image and likeness of God. And we have passion in us. And no culture in Nigeria advocates this kind of pugilism or this kind of intolerance of difference of opinion. And I dare say that the fact of an Igbo man emerging as president of Nigeria cannot be a reason for an insurrection. I mean, we've borne President Obasanjo's 8 years tenure as well as his military tenure, and nobody in Nigeria erupted against it. We've borne Shagari's tenure, we've borne Yaradua's tenure, we have borne Buhari's nearly 8 years tenure now. And if you add up all the military interregnums in Nigeria, we've borne a preponderance of leadership from one section of the country without this kind of violence that you foresee erupting. So I think sometimes in our panic, we exaggerate the situation. I mean, the other day you had a rally in Lagos. Yes, some people uh, behaved abnormally, but they were a minority of the people. And I'm sure that if the security were not in any way compromised, we would have seen those who were responsible for this now. And the law would have taken its course, and it would have been a deterrent for such things occurring. But there'll be incremental improvement. Every society goes through this. And I think we all have to be patient, vigilant, tenacious, consistent in our beliefs, and in fighting those things that are likely to impinge on building a better society.
Thank you, sir. I want to ask a question from Twitter. Someone is asking Hillary Akidenon. He said there are rumors about a proposed sit-at-home order on the day of the election in the Southeast. What's your opinion about this? I want to add what will be done to ensure that if such a thing happens, it is not effective.
Well, all the elders have been speaking up against it lately. And even the current sit at home on Mondays is declining. First of all, IPOP has come out openly to say that it's not in support of sit at home on every Monday. It's in support of sit at home any day that Nnamdi Kanu goes to court. And we have to show solidarity to him, especially as the courts have discharged and acquitted him. And the government is detaining him against the dictates of the law, and they are winning sympathy for him for the way he's been treated. And so when he goes to court, people feel a sense of solidarity. But when it's Monday, to be honest, in Abia State, where Nnamdi Kanu comes from, civil servants go to work on Monday. In Ebonyi State, civil servants go to work on Monday. It's only in Anambra, Imo, and Enugu. But in Enugu, by the time it is 10 o'clock, people are already on the streets. So it's obeyed more in breach than in compliance. And I think that a number of civil servants want to use it to extend their weekend holidays and really, because the governments are lukewarm about enforcing it, nobody really cares whether they go to work or not, But
I would
the
agree.
thing is not.
In Anambra, while Mr. Valentine was running for governorship of Anambra State at the time. Though prior to the election, there were a lot of noise that there will be sit at home and all that. But eventually, the people of Anambra came out to vote. So I think that's the same thing that would happen.
You see, when a majority of the citizenry do not agree with a law, the law becomes ineffective. It's difficult, and these young boys who are aggrieved, they are not everywhere. They can't police it. And the armed forces are also there. So if they attempt to police it in such a manner, they will incur a lot of casualties, which no parent here wants to see their children involved in. So one begins to wonder sometimes whether those who are trying to enforce it at home are inspired by people outside the Southeast. The resurgent violence we experienced with the attack of the convoy of the governor of Delta State in amongst Igbo leaders is seen as inspired from outside Igbo land. There is a feeling that some people outside Igbo land are determined to ensure that they inspire internal violence in Igbo land in order to ensure that the Igbos do not troop out to vote for Peter Obi. And that is speculating around our people. And in the churches now, the religious ministers are telling people this and say, don't listen to this sit at home. It's not coming from our boys, it's coming from outside.
Thank you, sir. Kibati, are you there?
Can we okay, sir. Okay, it seems we have just 5 more minutes. Let's try to squeeze in one more speaker, sir. Okay. Oh, Kelly has gone. Let's go to Arigosaki. He has his hands up. Please make your question as brief as possible, preferably
Yeah,
45 seconds.
very short question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, very simple question. Someone like Professor Charles Soludo, when I was growing up as a child, I was quite inspired by his scholarship, and it quite influenced most of the decisions I've taken in life. I studied economics because I wanted to be like someone like Soludo. But seeing the recent outburst of Soludo in this election cycle, I was quite disappointed, and I felt like um, this man is talking from a sense of envy and not out of his largesse for the people of Southeast. I don't know how Johannes and other Southeastern leaders have been able to really talk to him and address this kind of concern. You know. So, and I don't know whether he's not bossed because there appears to be suppression of campaigns in Anambra State. So that's my point. How has this Eastern elders tried to, talk to someone like him on
Okay.
the issue?
Okay. Sorry, sir. Before you answer, let's just have Dr. Lu ask this question in 30 seconds so he can treat both questions as once. Dr. Lu, please, you have 30 seconds. Quickly.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, sir, for coming to this space. Well, my question is, I understand that Ohanis they are actually officially endorsed their principal Peter Obi, but the question is there any other thing they are doing underground to one canvass for the votes, two to protect our votes in such a way that people will not be intimidated, people will be encouraged, so that we can have a higher turnout, so that it will not just be on paper like they endorse on TV. Is there anything that is being done officially on the ground to mobilize people, to encourage people to come out to vote, and to ensure that their votes are secured? Because I believe Anambra can give us 1 million votes if they actually come out to vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, listen. Regarding Professor Soludo, is my friend. I appointed him chairman of the Planning and Strategy Committee of Ohanese when I was President General. He's a professor, and professors tend to be idealistic. He and Peter are very close friends. Peter is the godfather of his son, and he's the godfather of Peter's son. And I believe they've also had rivalry from going back a long way. But I think he's toned down some of his outbursts, and I think we let it be there. They have familiar relationships where these matters can be resolved without further exacerbating our energies or inflaming the passions. I think it's a matter of rivalry, and it doesn't go beyond that into he's speaking for his state. And I'm sure that if he continues to say what he's saying, he may put his own popularity on the line. So we'd rather just leave it to be where it is. Um, um, on Aza's endorsement, and if we were doing something on the ground, I wouldn't tell you on such a public media. But yes, we've endorsed Peter, and we were the last in the Southern and Middle Belt Forum to do so advisedly because we didn't want Peter to emerge as an Igbo candidate. We want him to emerge as a Nigerian candidate, but one who is also loved by his own people and for whom we can give a testimony. Already a lot is happening in Igbo land. His acceptability is unquestionable. I mean, if you looked at the social media today, which you represent in this platform, you would have seen um, a former governor of Enugu State who was going to a coal camp area where they sell motor parts to campaign, and he was booed out of the place. You know, it is all in the social media today, and Peter was not there to do that. You would have seen yesterday an old fellow who is a PDP stalwart was going around in Suka urban area removing Labour Party posters And the young people apprehended him. They removed his shirt and walked him round the town to exhibit his malfeasance. It's all over the social media. If Ohanese's advice is not permeating the nooks and corners of Igbo land, these things will not erupt. You know, I mean, the people here, Peter is a son worthy of being proud of. You know, I mean, this thing goes beyond just Igbo, but it goes to the root of our feeling that we must turn a new leaf. We can't go on like this. It's, I'm not sure it's a feeling that is akin to just Igbos. Most people in Nigeria have come to the conclusion. You know, I read Professor Balaji Akiyemi the other day, being more outspoken than I ever expected him. He taught me political science in University of Ibadan. You know, I took some courses in the Department of Political Science, which he taught. Very brilliant man. He was Minister of Foreign Affairs. He came out in total condemnation of some of the arson that was going on in Lagos yesterday. And he came out heavily in favor of a turn of a new leaf in the determination of the leadership of our country. Look at somebody like Wole Soyinka. Wole Soyinka has not disguised his preference for Peter. He's made it public and he's articulated the basis of his preference. Whatever you may say about Obasanjo, he's intellectual in his forays. He's deep in his thoughts, and his endorsement were founded on profound logic, and these things go to show that, anybody talking about Peter as an Igbo candidate is wasting his time. In fact, Peter is perceived here as miserly. Peter is perceived here as not prepared to share the bounties of states, and our people like the merry-go-round, but they admire his discipline. And they admire the fact that he's admired by other Nigerians, and it makes him popular amongst our people, that he's admired outside his place. And clearly, if people love your children outside your home, you cannot but bless him for attracting you new friends and people who appreciate you. So we cannot do more but just pray. And as we say in these parts of the world, the hand of God is manifesting what is happening. The way things, look at the number of hours you are spending canvassing for Peter and canvassing for a better Nigeria. Your altruism, only God knows where you get money to finance these electronic discussions on a daily basis, And God knows how many people are listening to it and are being convinced by some of the contributions we all have made today. This is the new Nigeria we look forward to. I can't wait for it. And I will sing my non Dimitus as soon as it arrives. I would have fulfilled my existence in life if you guys can take over and take us to the promised land. I can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity to share these thoughts with you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Merci infiniment.
It's been an honor to have you on the platform. You've been inspiring. We've drawn a lot of strength from your words, and you can be sure that we're inspired to move forward and get the job done. I'd like to thank you.
I don't know if Valentine is still online. I'd like to thank him for his contributions in the electronic configuration of this campaign.
Yeah.
And his steadfastness. I sometimes wonder where he gets his energy. He travels around Nigeria in one day and still doesn't show it. Thank you so much indeed.
I remain loyal to you. You continue to impress all the time. We love
God
you.
bless
We love
you.
you. You
Yeah.
I
will
love you.
witness the
I love
new
you all
dawn.
too. I
You're
love
going
you
to
all
see.
too. I wish I could see the female voices. Maybe this interaction would have earned me a new wife. But if any of you is interested, you can have all of me. I'm looking for a wife.
Oh my God! Oh my God! We've had fun. We've had fun. Please, we're gonna share this. The whole of Nigeria will listen to this. You
Yeah.
are amazing. You are amazing. You make me proud. Honestly, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you. May the Almighty God bless your endeavors.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you
Goodbye.
so much,
Tomorrow we
sir.
have
Good night, sir.
Pogo.
Enjoy your
Yeah.
dinner.
Good night. Good night. God bless you so much, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
So tomorrow we have Dr. Pogo on this program, 6 p.m. Nigerian time, and he'll be sharing with us thoughts along these same lines. So I encourage everyone to please tune in tomorrow as well, 6 p.m. Nigerian time. On behalf of my co-hosts, Kibati, Bankole, Emma Saddam, Dr. Mo, and our guy, Valentine Ozibo, this is me signing out and saying thank you very much. See you
All
tomorrow.
right. Thank
One
you
love.
so much. Thank
One
you.
love.
Thank you.